ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more.
That powerful song gives us an insight on how we get to war, how we get to destruction. You all can come on in some even more. I want to make sure these signs are seen as we deepen and we add to the reasons we're here. It is when we study, can somebody lift this podium up? It's when we study war, when we actually learn it and continue to teach it. And so today, we are here for the third Moral Monday. Stop the war and save lives. Say that, stop the war, and save lives.
Save lives.
And we are in 16 states and in Canada today, clergy, moral activists, impacted people are gathering. But we made a decision that today we needed to engage in deepening the call. And so today I'm going to take some time and study why we have nonviolence and a commitment to nonviolence. We're asking 1,000 clergy beginning today and impacted people to go online, and in a moment you will hear it. This is another special declaration and prayer to make the commitment and to send it to every member of Congress, because we must make sure, as one of the principles of nonviolent direct action, that people know exactly why we're doing what we're doing. For it may not change them immediately, but surely it changes us and keeps us focused on why we must study war no more. We also are announcing today that on May the 11th, we're calling for peace and nonviolent rallies in our 16 states and here in D.C. And we'll be seeking authorization. What's it called when you get from the city, permits to be in the street right here in front of the White House, and call on people to join us on May the 11th here and around the states. Lastly, today we are also announcing that we're calling on young people who now are automatically selected to serve, that in our Moral Mondays we will be teaching the basics of conscientious objection and giving young folk a place they can come and announce their public statement against war and how and what the process is for engaging in conscientious objection. Why these three things? Why this deepening? Give me a moment as we talk to people around the country and around the nation and those of us who are here. At Saturday night's White House Correspondents' Dinner, journalists planned a party with White House officials. The very White House officials who consistently berate them for doing their job. That in itself was a curious reason for gathering. But before Trump could give what he claimed would have been the most inappropriate speech ever made, it's what he said. The event was interrupted by Cole Thomas Allen, a 31-year-old man from California who fired at Secret Service agents while attempting to storm a security checkpoint. Allen was taken into custody with no officers or guests, and no officers or guests were injured. At a press conference back at the White House, Trump claimed he felt everyone coming together before the shots were fired and called for unity in response to the gunman's action. But President Trump has spent a decade or more exploiting every possible fault line to divide Americans. He has incited violence against members of the media at rallies, and he kicked off the celebration of the United States 250th anniversary in Des Moines, Iowa last July 4th by declaring hatred for Democrats and others who would not support his dramatic cuts to nutrition assistance and health care, which are also forms of violence. We know very little about Allen or his motive for this attack, but this much seems clear. Allen believes what the president and many others in our society believe, and that is that peace will come when their enemies are obliterated. And they must use violence to win the world that they want. This idea is what Jesus called bad leaven, a spirit of division and violence that cannot be easily turned off once it has been unleashed to serve some political goal. Once this bad leaven is unleashed, once this spirit, impure spirit is unleashed, it's hard to turn it off. It was turned on in the year of my birth, in 1963, when George Wallace, a governor, openly and at his inauguration declared segregation yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and forever. He unleashed it. He unleashed a loosening of okaying whatever it took to keep segregation in place. And before the end of the year, students at South Carolina College had been killed. Bombs had gone off in Birmingham. Medgar Evers was killed the night that Kennedy announced his plans for the '64 Civil Rights Act. Other assassinations were planned for that night. 17 days after the March on Washington. It's right that the sirens are going off. 17 days after the March on Washington, 4 girls were blown up in a church while they were studying how to love and forgive your enemies. And the president in November was assassinated. It is a dangerous thing to loose this leaven.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
People with power have sown to the wind, and now we are reaping the whirlwind. The attempt, Saturday's attempt at revolutionary violence was as misguided as Trump's war of choice in the Middle East, which continues to threaten total annihilation, he says, if Iranian negotiators do not submit to his unilateral demands. On April the 7th, in response to the U.S. president's threat to destroy an entire civilization, Pope Leo called on U.S. citizens to petition members of Congress and demand peace. Any war of choice is by definition unjust according to the just war doctrine of the Catholic Church. But the threat of total war is a direct violation of the specific teaching of the Second Vatican Council. When all, not some, all of the church's bishops gathered in Rome to consider what just war doctrine means in the modern world. And with the pushing of nonviolent protesters like you see gathered here, led by Dorothy Day, they wrote in 1965 in Gaudium et Spes, any act of war aimed indiscriminately at the destruction of entire cities or of extensive areas along with their population is a crime against God and humanity itself. That is why what we are seeing in many ways is a war on divinity, being waged by a narcissist who has some kind of God complex. When Trump threatened a crime against God and humanity, it was then that the Pope said every member of the church has a responsibility to demand action by our congressional representatives. Both the U.S. House and Senate have failed to pass on March 4th, on April 15th, and April 17th, joint resolutions to restrict Trump's war powers in this illegal and unholy war. The slim Republican majorities in both chambers have chosen to stay in lockstep with the president through nearly 2 months of an unholy war. By this coming Friday, May 1st, the War Powers Act requires Congress to act affirmatively to continue waging war. Neither Speaker Johnson nor Senate Leader Thune have announced votes on a war powers resolution, and Trump has given no indication that he will comply with the law. That is why we must deepen our commitment to nonviolence witness, and why we're calling beginning today 1,000 clergy and others to send this declaration directly to every member of Congress. In the model of authoritarian strongman, Trump is trying to use the U.S. military war powers to protect strength at a moment when he is politically weak. We must deepen our understanding of what's going on. Even Saturday night, as he responded in real time to the events via social media, he said he wanted the show to go on, overlooking safety concerns for his own administration officials and the journalists who cover them. He wanted the show to go on for the same reason he planned a speech to attack the free press. He thought it would make him look strong. But strong men or women are intimidated by real strength, which is what this nation and our world desperately needs right now. Real, nonviolent, moral strength rooted in love and justice and truth-telling. We need the power and the moral authority of love to fight people who get up every morning and ask how they can use their power to hurt people that they see as enemies. We need the authority of true moral authority to stand against the policy violence that threatens lives here at home and around the world. Because not just war is violence, denying health care is violence. Denying child care is violence. And to announce that we can't provide health care and child care because we're fighting war is violence. And an apathetic attitude that refuses to name all of these forms of violence is also violence. Since Monday of Holy Week, March 30th, local moral leaders, veterans, concerned citizens have gathered outside the White House in Washington, D.C., and at local offices of members of Congress for Moral Mondays against unholy war. We are moving in the tradition of nonviolent struggle. We have aimed to clarify who has the power to stop this violence and make clear our moral demands for peace. Though he has been singled out and attacked by the president, Pope Leo was simply joining moral leaders. He wasn't the only one to speak. He was joining moral leaders, joining his own American archbishops, joining moral leaders from a range of Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, and non-confessional traditions when he encouraged members of the Catholic Church to join his nonviolent petition. This is a shared moral demand of all of our traditions. And in the midst of his nonviolent campaign in India, Gandhi used to say, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, and then you win. Those who stand in nonviolent moral authority must understand this. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they attack you, and then you win. But this is only true of nonviolent campaigns that continue to grow their struggles in the power of love. We cannot be distracted by diversions, nor can we capitulate to the nihilism that accepts the chaos we are experiencing as inevitable. Without a doubt, Trump and the MAGA regime will try to use the violent actions of the gunman at the White House Correspondents' Dinner to justify more violence and more suppression of civil liberties. Nevertheless, a nonviolent movement must escalate its moral demands, rooted in love, rooted in truth-telling, and rooted in justice. 266 members of Congress have voted against efforts to restrict Trump's war powers. We need a moral witness at every one of their offices. Somebody say every one of their offices. I'm teaching now. And we need to demand meetings to discuss why we cannot continue to fund this war. Every House member who plans to return to Congress next year faces an election in November, as do a third of the U.S. senators. We must grow our nonviolent movement for a third Reconstruction by registering, educating, and mobilizing voters around this moral issue in the midterms and in every election following. What's more, we need to use this opportunity to recruit a new generation of nonviolent foot soldiers. Some of us who are here that have gray hair, God's got you still active to recruit. For the first time in U.S. history, the Selective Service Administration is scheduled to make registration for the U.S. military draft automatic. They've already done it this year. In the past, young men have been asked to register for the draft when they turn 18. But after December of this year, registration will become automatic. But we must teach that enlistment in a military draft cannot be automatic in a country where the president is threatening total war. We must remember what the teaching of the church was. The saint in Vatican II, the document that condemned total war, who also, that same document, endorsed legal protection for those who refuse military service on the grounds of conscience. Nonviolence is not opting out of the struggle against the world's injustice. Nonviolence is opting in the struggle. Opting in to training and preparation for the use of a force more powerful than fists and guns and bombs. They used to say in the civil rights movement, we've got something inside of us that water can't wash out, and fire can't burn out, and bombs can't blow out. Like Dr. King, who led a nonviolent struggle for justice in the United States along with many others, while the Second Vatican Council met from 1963 to 1965, The bishops of the Catholic Church recognize that the prospect of total war in a nuclear era meant that we as a society have to choose between nonviolence and non-existence. Our moral movement against unholy war must confess that we've not sufficiently at times invested enough in recruiting and training young people for nonviolence. The U.S. military spends billions of dollars recruiting poor and marginalized youth for the military, sponsoring video games and sporting events that provoke violence as the answer to society's problems. They try to get so many people to study war. As we are committing to escalate our moral witness at the local offices of members of Congress, we also pledge that at Moral Monday Spaces to be a space where young people can gather with elders who know the power of nonviolence and make a public profession of their status as conscientious objectors. Toward that end, we want to share this vow of nonviolence with individuals that they can make in community together at Moral Mondays against unholy war or wherever people are gathered. If you know a young person who you do not want to see devoured by a war machine that is serving the selfish interests of billionaires, encourage them now to join a Moral Monday in your community and commit to nonviolent change, nonviolent struggle for a better world. And what would that commitment be? Well, today we're going to read it here, and then in a minute we're going to walk over to the White House. I don't know if they'll assemble to arrest us. We won't stay past the third warning today, but we want to read and pray over there. But the basis of the nonviolent is this: I commit allegiance to the power of love. Y'all want to say it with me? Let's do it. I reject every myth that claims a world or a nation can be built by destroying my enemies. And I affirm the wisdom of every tradition that teaches life is a gift. Don't pass them out. Don't pass out. In gratitude for the gift of my life. Say that.
In gratitude for the gift of my life.
And in recognition that service is the rent we pay for our space.
In recognition
that service is the rent
we pay for our space.
Here on earth. I commit to nonviolent struggle against every form of violence. I refuse to accept the violence that starves a child. The violence that denies someone health care. The violence that keeps people in poverty. The violence that denies people a place to belong. The violence that says some types of people do not deserve the same respect that the inherent dignity of every person demands of each of us. Because I understand the power of love in action. My resistance to violence is not passive. I commit to using every nonviolent tool available to resist evil and to build the beloved community. I will make every effort to pursue the truth by speaking directly with people whose actions I oppose. I will petition my representatives and engage in mass education through nonviolent protests, vigils, marches, and mass assemblies. I will exercise the nonviolent tool of voting, and I will work to educate, register, and mobilize voters who've been alienated from the democratic process. I will aim to keep my own intentions pure through fasting, prayer, meditation, self-reflection, as a means of fighting the violence that is within me. I will refuse to cooperate with evil by joining others in boycotts, strikes, sit-ins, pray-ins, stand-ins, and shutdowns. I will be conspicuously present. I commit that I'm willing to lay down my body to resist evil. But I will not take another person's body. I make this pledge in the company of a beloved community. And I trust that the power of love working through us, speaking the truth, standing for justice with others like us, can present a vision of the world as it ought to be and not as it is. This I pledge with my heart. This is the pledge that we're calling on people all over the country, and young and old, to make at this moment.